Gloria Hilton and her fifth husband didn't live in New Hampshire very long, but they lived there long enough for me to sell them a bathtub enclosure. My main line is aluminum combination storm windows and screens, but anybody who is in storm windows is practically automatically in bathtub enclosures too. The enclosure they ordered was for Gloria Hilton's personal bathtub. I guess that was the zenith of my career. Some men are asked to build mighty dams or noble skyscrapers or conquer terrible plagues or lead great armies into battle. Me, I was asked to keep drafts off the most famous body in the world. People ask me how well did I know Gloria Hilton. I generally say the only time I ever saw that woman in the flesh was through a hot air register. That was how the bathroom where they wanted the enclosure was heated, with a hot air register in the floor. It wasn't connected to the furnace. It just bled heat from the ceiling of the room down below. I don't wonder Gloria Hilton found her bathroom cold. I was installing the enclosure when loud talk started coming out of the register. I was at a very tricky point in the operation, gluing the waterproof gasket around the rim of the tub with contact cement. So I couldn't go close the register. I had to listen to what wasn't any of my business, whether I wanted to or not. "Don't talk to me about love," Gloria Hilton said to her fifth husband. "You don't know anything about love. You don't know the meaning of love." I hadn't looked down through the register yet, so that the only face I had to put with her voice was her face, which I had happened to see in the movies. "Maybe you're right, Gloria," said her fifth husband. "I give you my word of honor I'm right," she said. "Well," he said, "that certainly brings the whole discussion to a dead stop right there. How could I possibly argue with the sacred word of honor of Gloria Hilton?" I knew what he looked like, all right. He was the one who'd done all the negotiating for the bathtub enclosure. I had also sold him 2 Fleetwood triple-track storm windows with self-storing screens for the 2 bathroom windows. The whole time we were negotiating, he called his wife Miss Hilton. Miss Hilton wanted this and Miss Hilton wanted that. He was only 35, but the circles under his eyes made him look like he was 60. "I pity you," Gloria Hilton said to him. "I pity anybody who can't love. They are the most pitiful people there are." "The more you talk," he said, "the more I'm convinced I'm one of them." He was the writer, of course. My wife keeps a lot of Hollywood stuff in her head, and she tells me Gloria Hilton was married to a motorcycle policeman, then a sugar millionaire, then to somebody who played Tarzan, then her agent, and then the writer, George Murrah. The writer was the one I knew. "People keep wondering what the matter with the world is," said Gloria. "I know what the matter is. It's simple. Most men don't know the meaning of the word love." "At least give me credit for trying to find out what it means," said Murrah. "For 1 solid year now, I haven't done a single solitary thing but order a bathtub enclosure and try to find out what love means." "I suppose you're going to blame me for that too," she said. "For what?" he said. "The fact that you haven't written a word since we've been married," she said. "I suppose that's somehow my fault too." "I hope I'm not that shallow," he said. "I know a plain, ordinary coincidence when I see one. The fights we have all night, the photographers and reporters and so-called friends we have here all day, they have nothing to do with the fact that I've dried up." "You're one of those people who enjoys suffering," she said. "That's a smart way to be," he said, "believe me." "I'll tell you frankly," she said, "I'm disappointed in you. I knew," he said, "that sooner or later you would come right out and say it." "I might as well tell you, too," she said, "that I've decided to bring this farce to an end." "It's nice of you to make me among the first to know," he said. "Shall I notify Luella Parsons, or has that already been taken care of?" I had the gasket glued onto the bathtub rim then, so I was free to close the register. I looked straight down through the grating, and there Gloria Hilton was. She had her hair up in curlers. She didn't have any makeup on. She hadn't even bothered to draw on her eyebrows. She had on some kind of a slip and bathrobe that was gaping open. I swear that woman wasn't any prettier than a used studio couch. "I don't think you're very funny," she said. "You knew I was a serious writer when you married me," he said. She stood up. She spread her arms like she was Moses telling the Jews the promised land was right over the next hill. "Go on back to your precious wife and your precious son," she said. "I certainly won't stand in your way." I closed the register. 5 minutes later, Murrah came upstairs and told me to clear out. "Miss Hilton wants to use her bathroom," he said. I never saw such a peculiar expression on a man's face. He was all red and there were tears in his eyes, but there was this crazy laugh tearing him apart, trying to get out. "I'm not quite finished," I said. "Miss Hilton is completely finished," he said. "Clear out." So I went down to my truck, drove into town, and had a cup of coffee. The door for the bathtub enclosure was on the wooden rack on the back of my truck out in the open, and it certainly attracted a lot of attention. Most people, when they order an enclosure door, don't want anything on it unless maybe it's a flamingo or a seahorse. The plant, which is over in Lawrence, Massachusetts, has set up to sandblast a flamingo or a seahorse on a door for only $6 extra. But Gloria Hilton wanted a big G, 2 feet across, and in the middle of the G she wanted a life-size head of herself. And the eyes on the head had to be exactly 5 feet 2 inches above the bottom of the tub, because that's how high her real eyes were when she stood up barefoot in the tub. They practically went crazy over in Lawrence. One of the people I was having coffee with was Harry Crocker, the plumber. "I certainly hope you insisted on measuring her yourself," he said, "so that the figures will be absolutely correct." "Her husband did it," I said. "Some people have all the luck," he said. I went to the pay telephone and I called up Moira's house to see if it would be all right for me to come back and finish up. The line was busy. When I got back to my coffee, Harry Crocker said to me, "You missed something I don't think anybody is ever liable to see in this town again." "What's that?" I said. "Gloria Hilton and her maid going through town at 200 miles an hour, he said. "Which way were they headed?" I said. "West," he said. So I called Murrah again. I figured with Gloria Hilton gone, all the big telephoning would be over. But the telephone went right on, being busy for practically an hour. I thought maybe somebody had torn the telephone out by its roots, but the operator said it was in working order. "Try the number again then," I told her. That time I got through. Murrah answered the phone. All I said to him was, "Hello," and he got very excited. He wasn't excited about getting the bathtub enclosure finished. He was excited because he thought I was somebody named John. "John, John," he said to me, "thank God you called. John, I know what you think of me, and I don't blame you for thinking that, but please listen to what I have to say before you hang up, John. She's left me, John. That part of my life is over, finished. Now I'm trying to pick up the pieces. John," he said, "in the name of mercy, you've got to come down here. Please, John, please." "Mr. Murrah?" I said. "Yes," he said. From the way his voice went away from the telephone, I guess he thought I just walked into the room. "It's me, Mr. Murrah," I said. "It's who?" he said. "The bathtub enclosure man," I said. "I was expecting a very important long-distance call," he said. "Please get off the wire." "I beg your pardon," I said. "I just wanted to know when you wanted me to finish up there." "Never," he said. "Forget it." "Mr. Murrah," I said, "I can't return the door for credit." "Send me the bill," he said. "I make you a present of the door." "Whatever you say," I said. "Now you've got these 2 Fleetwood triple-track windows, too. Throw 'em on the dump," he said. "Mr. Murrah," I said, "I guess you're upset about something." "You're smart," he said. "Maybe throwing away that door makes sense," I said, "but storm windows never hurt a soul. Why don't you let me come out and put 'em up? You'll never even know I'm there." "All right, all right, all right," he said, and he hung up. Now, the Fleetwood triple-track is our first-line window, so there isn't anything quick and dirty about the way we put them up. We put a gasket all the way around, just the way we do on a bathtub enclosure. So I had some standing around to do at Moira's house, just waiting for the glue to dry. You can actually fill up a room equipped with Fleetwoods with water clear up to the ceiling, and it won't leak, not through the windows anyway. While I was waiting on the glue, Moira came out and asked me if I wanted a drink. "Pardon me," I said. "Or maybe bathtub enclosure men don't drink on duty," he said. "That's only on television," I said. So he took me to the kitchen, and he got out a bottle of ice and a couple of glasses. "This is very nice of you," I said. "I may not know what love is," he said, "but at least I've never gotten drunk by myself." "That's what we're going to do," I said. "Unless you have some other suggestion," he said. "I'll have to think a minute," I said. "That's a mistake," he said. "You miss an awful lot of life that way. That's why you Yankees are so cold," he said. "You think too much. That's why you marry so seldom." "At least some of that is plain lack of money," I said. "No, no," he said. "It goes deeper than that. You people around here don't grasp the thistle firmly." He had to explain to me about how a thistle won't prick you if you grab it hard and fast. "I don't believe that about thistles," I said. "Typical New England conservatism," he said. "I gather you aren't from these parts," I said. That happiness is not mine. He told me he was from Los Angeles. I guess that's nice, too, I said. The people are all phonies, he said. I wouldn't know about that, I said. That's why we took up residence here, he said, as my wife, my second wife, that is, told all the reporters at our wedding. We are getting away from all the phonies. We are going to live where people are really people. We are going to live in New Hampshire. My husband and I are going to find ourselves. He is going to write and write and write. He's going to write the most beautiful scenario anybody in the history of literature has ever written for me. That's nice, I said. You didn't read that in the newspapers or the magazines, he said. No, I said. I used to go out with a girl who subscribed to Film Fund, but that was years ago. I have no idea what happened to her. Somewhere in the course of this conversation, a fifth of a gallon of Old Hickey's private stock sour mash bourbon was evaporating, or was being stolen, or was otherwise disappearing very fast. And I haven't got the conversation set down quite straight, because somewhere in there, Murrah told me he'd been married first when he was only 18, and he told me who the John was he thought I was on the telephone. It hurt Murrah to talk about John. John, he said, is my only child. 15 years old. Murrah choked up, pointed southeast, only 22 miles away, so near and yet so far, he said. He didn't stay with his mother in Los Angeles, I said. His home was with her, said Murrah, but he goes to school at Mount Henry. Mount Henry is a very good boys' prep school near here. One of the reasons I came to New Hampshire was to be close to him. Murrah shook his head. I thought surely he'd get in touch with me sooner or later, return a telephone call, answer a letter. But he never did, I said. Never, said Murrah. You know what the last thing he said to me was? No, I said. When I divorced his mother and married Gloria Hilton, the thing he said to me was, Father, you're contemptible. I don't want to hear another word from you as long as I live. That's very strong, I said. Friend, said Murrah hoarsely, that's mighty strong. He bowed his head. That was the word he used, contemptible. Young as he is, he sure used the right word. Did you finally get in touch with him today, I said. I called the headmaster of the school, and I told him there was a terrible family emergency, and he had to make John call me right away, said Murrah. It worked, thank God, and even though I'm definitely contemptible, he has agreed to come see me tomorrow. Somewhere else in that conversation, Murrah told me to look at the statistics sometime. I promised him that I would. Just statistics in general or some special statistics, I asked him. Statistics on marriage, he said. I'm scared to think of what I'm liable to find, I said. You look at the statistics, said Murrah, and you'll find out that when people get married when they're only 18, the way my first wife and I did, there's a 50-50 chance that the thing will blow sky high. I was 18 when I was married, I said. And you're still with your first wife, he said. Going on 20 years now, I said. Don't you ever feel as if you got gypped out of your bachelor days, your playboy days, your days as a great lover? Well, I said, in New Hampshire, those days generally come between the ages of 14 and 17. Let me put it to you this way, he said. Say you'd been married all those years, fighting about the dumb things married people fight about, being broke and worried most of the time. I'm right with you, I said. And say the movies bought a book you'd written, and they hired you to write the screenplay, and Gloria Hilton was going to be the star, he said. I don't think I can do that, I said. All right, he said, what's the biggest thing that could possibly happen in your line of work? I had to think a while. I guess it would be if I sold the Connors Hotel on putting Fleetwood windows on every window. That must be 500 windows or more, I said. Good, he said. You've just made the sale. You've got real money in your pocket for the first time. You've just had a fight with your wife, and you're thinking mean things about her, feeling sorry for yourself. When the manager of the hotel is Gloria Hilton looking the way she does in the movies. I'm listening, I said. Say you started putting up those 500 Fleetwoods, he said, and say that every time you put up another storm window, there was Gloria Hilton smiling at you through the glass, as if you were a god or something. Is there anything left to drink in the house, I asked him. Say that went on for 3 months, he went on, and every night you went home to your wife, some woman you'd known so long that she was practically like a sister, and she would crab about some little thing. This is a very warm room, even without storm windows, I said. Say Gloria Hilton all of a sudden said to you, he said, dare to be happy, my poor darling. Oh, darling, we were made for each other. Dare to be happy with me. I go limp when I see you putting up storm windows. I can't stand to see you so unhappy, to know you belong to some other woman, to know how happy I could make you, if only you belonged to me. After that, I remember, Moore and I went outdoors to look for thistles. He was going to show me how to grab thistles without getting hurt. I don't think we found any. I remember pulling up a lot of plants and throwing them against the house and laughing a lot, but I don't think any of the plants were thistles. Then we lost each other in the great out-of-doors. I yelled for him for a while, but his answers got fainter and fainter, and I finally went home. I don't remember what the homecoming was like, but my wife does. She says I spoke to her in a rude and disrespectful manner. I told her that I had sold 500 Fleetwood windows to the Connors Hotel. I also told her that she should look up the statistics on teenage marriages sometime. Then I went upstairs and I took the door off our bathtub enclosure. I told her Mura and I were trading doors. I got the door off and then I went to sleep in the tub. My wife woke me up and I told her to go away. I told her Gloria Hilton had just bought the Connors Hotel and that I was going to marry her. I tried to tell her something else very important about thistles, but I couldn't pronounce thistles, so I went to sleep again. So my wife poured bubble bath powder all over me, and she turned on the cold water faucet of the bathtub, and she went to bed in the guest room. About 3 o'clock the next afternoon, I went over to Murray's to finish putting up his windows and to find out what we'd agreed to do about his bathtub enclosure, if anything. I had 2 doors on the back of my truck, my door with a flamingo and his door with Gloria Hilton. I started to ring his doorbell, but then I heard somebody knocking on his upstairs window. I looked up and saw Moore standing in the window of Gloria Hilton's bathroom. My ladder was already leaning against the sill of the window, so I went up the ladder and asked Moore what was going on. He opened the window and he told me to come in. He was very pale and shaky. "Your boy showed up yet?" I said. "Yes," he said. "He's downstairs. I picked him up at the bus station an hour ago." "You two hitting it off all right?" I said. Moore shook his head. "He's still so bitter," he said. "He's only 15, but he talks to me as though he were my great-great-grandfather. I came up here for just a minute, and now I haven't got nerve enough to go back down." He took me by my arm. "Listen," he said, "you go down and sort of pave the way." "If I've got any pavement left in me," I said, "I'd better stave it for home." I filled him in on my own situation at home, which was far from ideal. "Whatever you do," he said, "don't make the same mistake I did. You keep that home of yours together, no matter what. I know it must be lousy from time to time, but believe me, there are ways of life that are 10 times lousier." "Well," I said, "I thank the good Lord for one thing." "What's that?" he said. "Gloria Hilton hasn't come right out and said she loved me yet," I said. I went downstairs to see Moore's boy. Young John had on a man's suit. He even had on a vest. He wore big, black-rimmed spectacles. He looked like a college professor. "John," I said, "I'm an old friend of your father's." "That's so," he said, and he looked me up and down. He wouldn't shake hands. "You certainly are a mature young man," I said. "I've had to be," he said. "When Father walked out on Mother and me, that made me head of the family, wouldn't you say?" "Well, now, John," I said, "your father hasn't been too happy either, you know." "That certainly is a great disappointment to me," he said. "I thought Gloria Hilton made men as happy as men could possibly be." "John," I said, "when you get older, you're going to understand a lot of things you don't understand now." "You must mean nuclear physics," he said. "I can hardly wait." And he turned his back to me, and he looked out the window. "Where's Father?" he said. "Here he is," said Moore from the top of the stairs. "Here the poor fool is." He came creaking down the stairs. "I think I'd better go back to school, Father," said the boy. "So soon?" said Moore. "I was told there was an emergency, or I wouldn't have come," said the boy. "There doesn't seem to be any emergency, so I'd like to go back, if you don't mind." "Don't mind?" said Moore. He held out his arms. "John," he said, "you'll break my heart if you walk out on me now without—" "Without what, Father?" said the boy. He was cold as ice. "Without forgiving me," said Moore. "Never," said the boy. "I'm sorry. There's one thing I'll never do." He nodded. "Whenever you're ready to go, Father," he said, "I'll be waiting at the car." And he walked out of the house. Moore sat in a chair with his head in his hands. "What shall I do now?" he said. "Maybe this is a punishment I deserve. I guess that what I do is just grit my teeth and take it." "I can only think of one thing," I said. "What's that?" he said. Kick him in the pants, I said. So that's what Moore did. He went out to the car, looking all gloomy and blue. He told John something was wrong with the front seat. He made John get out so he could fix it. Then Moore let the boy have it in the seat of the pants with the side of his foot. I don't think there was any pain connected with it, but it did have a certain amount of lift. The boy did a kind of polka downhill toward the shrubbery where his father and I had been looking for thistles the night before. When he got himself stopped and turned around, he was certainly one surprised-looking boy. John, Moore said to him, "I'm sorry I did that, but I couldn't think of anything else to do." For once, the boy didn't have a snappy comeback. "I have made many serious mistakes in my life," said Moore, "but I don't think that was one of them. I love you, and I love your mother, and I think I'll go on kicking you until you can find it in your heart to give me another chance." The boy couldn't think of anything to say, but I could tell he wasn't interested in being kicked again. "Now you come back to the house," said Moore, "and we'll talk this thing over like civilized human beings." When they got back to the house, Moore got the boy to call up his mother in Los Angeles. "You tell her we're having a nice time, and I've been terribly unhappy, and I'm through with Gloria Hilton, and I want her to take me back on any terms whatsoever," said Moore. The boy told his mother, and she cried, and the boy cried, and Moore cried, and I cried, and then Moore's first wife told him he could come back home any time he wanted to, and that was that. The way we settled the bathtub enclosure door thing was that I actually took Moore's door and he took mine. I was trading a $22 door for a $48 door, not counting the picture of Gloria Hilton. My wife was out when I got home. I hung the new door. My boy came up and watched me. He was kind of red-nosed about something. "Where's your mother?" I said to him. "She went out," he said. "When's she due back?" I said. "She said she was maybe never coming back," said the boy. I was sick, but I didn't let the boy know it. "That's one of her jokes," I said. "She says that all the time." "I never heard her say it before," he said. I was really scared when supper time rolled around, and I still didn't have a wife. I tried to be brave. I got supper for the boy and me, and I said, "Well, I guess she's been delayed somewhere." "Father," said the boy. "What?" I said. "What did you do to Mother last night?" he said. He took a very high and mighty tone. "Mind your own business," I said, "or you're liable to get a swift kick in the pants." That calmed him right down. My wife came home at 10 o'clock, thank God. She was cheerful. She said she'd had a swell time just being alone, shopping alone, eating in a restaurant alone, going to a movie alone. She gave me a kiss, and she went upstairs. I heard the shower running, and I all of a sudden remembered the picture of Gloria Hilton on the bathtub enclosure door. I ran up the stairs to tell her what the picture was doing on the door, to tell her I would have it sandblasted first thing in the morning. I went into the bathroom. My wife was standing up, taking a shower. She was just the same height as Gloria Hilton, so the picture on the door made kind of a mask for her. There was my wife's body with the head of Gloria Hilton on it. My wife wasn't sore. She laughed. She thought it was funny. "Guess who?" she said.